morning. Welcome to BBC News. The government is setting out a series of steps to try to deal with public concern about tax avoidance. David Cameron says he wants to reduce secrecy by forcing companies in the UK to declare who ultimately profits from their work. Mr Cameron is meeting representatives from British overseas dependencies such as Bermuda and Jersey to press them to do more to tackle tax evasion and tax avoidance. Well, our political correspondent, Chris Mason, is in Downing Street. Chris.
Yes, good morning to you from Downing Street. If you hear a few sounds, it'll be Trooping the Colour just over my right shoulder on Horse Guards Parade. Quite a lot on the agenda in terms of tax here in Downing Street today. Some interesting ideas fleshed out by the Prime Minister in an interview in The Guardian this morning. Firstly, about British Crown dependencies, and we'll come to that in just a second because there's a meeting here at lunchtime with some of the leaders and Treasury Ministers from the Crown dependencies. But also talk about improving transparency around tax here in the UK, and this idea of having an additional register on top of the existing register at Companies House, which would flesh out specifically about who the financial beneficiaries were of particular companies. Again, the idea being that that would be more transparent, and talk that that list could eventually become public. At first it would just be available to HM Revenue and Customs. The idea would be it become public in the medium term if it didn't put British business at a disadvantage internationally. Here is the Chief Secretary to the Treasury, number 2 in the Treasury, the Liberal Democrats' Danny Alexander.
It's critically important that we have transparency about who owns companies, who are the ultimate beneficiaries of any given corporate structure. That's why today we are announcing that in the UK we'll be establishing a new obligation on companies to know who owns them and to put that information on a central register. That will help our tax authorities here. We want other countries to do that, and why we are promoting very hard in the G8 and in the run-up to the G8 better arrangements for the sharing of tax information around the world. There are conventions on legal assistance in tax matters, mutual assistance, and that's what the Prime Minister will be talking about to the overseas territories today.
So that's Danny Alexander, Chief Secretary to the Treasury, reflecting there just at the end of that extract we saw about the British overseas territories, the British Crown dependencies, and what they're doing around this whole agenda of tax transparency. Let's bring in Senator Philip Ozouf, who is Treasury Minister for Jersey in the Channel Islands. Good morning to you. Thanks for talking to BBC News. What message will you be trying to get across to David Cameron when you meet in the next hour or so?
Well, the Chief Minister is going to be meeting with the Prime Minister. He's going to be welcoming the agenda that David Cameron is setting, trying to get a new global standard on agreement of how countries should exchange information on tax. On that issue of beneficial ownership, I think it's great news that the UK has announced this morning that they're going to put their registry in place. Some of the Crown dependencies are already doing much of this work, which is almost a vindication of our leadership around the world on corporate beneficiary. There's lots of misinformation that's said about who owns companies in offshore centres. We've already got a registry, and we're going to be also publishing a further action plan to improve further our standards in Jersey ahead of the G8 summit on Monday and Tuesday.
What do you say to those who throw the label tax haven around Jersey's neck, who suggest that you and others, it's not just Jersey of course, Guernsey and the Isle of Man and Bermuda and many others, are too secretive, not as open as you should be, and ultimately deny the UK Exchequer tax revenue?
Well, I think this opportunity of having this meeting with the Prime Minister today is giving us the opportunity to explain what is not happening in Jersey. Jersey is not a tax haven, and we're certainly advanced of many other of the leading nations of the world on holding information and then sharing it as appropriate with authorities around the world of who actually owns Jersey companies. So Jersey is not a tax haven. And the message to the Prime Minister is going to be a constructive one. He's spoken about the importance of global trade, free markets. He believes in low tax. He believes in competition. And this agenda that he's setting on the G8 is good for Britain, and it's good for the Crown dependencies. And it's certainly an opportunity for Jersey to dispel some of the myths that exist about what we do. We're part of the solution. We're not the problem.
Have you guys had to recognise that there's been this international debate rumbling about tax, particularly at a time of austerity where governments around the world are short of money and their electorates are very conscious of that, to properly engage with this whole idea of transparency and I guess refresh your image, shake off that image, that label of the tax haven that is so often, you say unfairly, but is so often thrown around your neck?
Yes, indeed, and we understand that, and we've got a responsibility, I think, to explain to MPs, to leaders around the world, to leaders of the G8, of how good and beneficial some aspects of what happens in the well-regulated, reputable financial centres such as Jersey. And I think this whole global agenda, level playing field, the common rules applying to all jurisdictions, jurisdictions moving together on a common standard of information exchange on transparency is good for the British agenda for trade, and it's certainly good for the Crown dependencies.
We're very grateful to you. Senator Philip Ozouf there, who is the Treasury Minister for Jersey in the English Channel Islands. That discussion due to get underway here in Downing Street pretty shortly with the Prime Minister once Trooping the Colour is over. And then the whole issue and debate around tax and transparency will move to Northern Ireland with the G8 summit getting underway there in a couple of days' time.
OK, Chris Mason in Downing Street for the moment. Chris, thanks very much.